Record here, recording. Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas W. Timbrooks, and I am going to be running. I'm a candidate for Oregon's 6th Congressional District, House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. That's Congress over in Washington, D.C. I don't know, whichever way your TV or whatever you're looking at it, it's over in Washington, D.C. That's in that direction, but it might be in that direction. I don't know. Anyways, let me start. That's me right there. Thomas W. Timbrooks, United States House of Representatives, Oregon's 6th Congressional District. Now, for this election period, I am a write-in candidate. If you like me, go ahead and just write it in, okay? But the person who actually won the primary election is a guy named David Russ, and we're both running for the same position and everything, but yeah, I'm totally on his side, and he and I will probably be working together and everything. So anyways, yeah, I put these things on as often as possible. I've got a daily thing that I do from my house. I got hair out of the way. I got white hair against a black background, and it's kind of annoying. If I see any out of place, it's just crazy. Got a monitor here. That's how I can see myself. Anyways. So yeah, I put these things out as often as I can because you, the public, you are casting your votes, okay? And the people who you cast your vote for, you deserve more than just a sign on the side of the road. Here's a picture of the person. Here's the person's name, and this is what the person's running for, okay? You deserve more than that. Okay, whenever I vote for somebody, I vote in an election as often as if there is an election, I will go for that. I will vote in that election. It's my right as an American citizen to vote is very powerful. So whenever I vote for somebody, I do my research. I look and find out what they are all about. I try to make the best possible decision based on the research that I do. And I'm an engineer. Research is what I do. I do research, and from whatever I find out as a result of that research, that's how I cast my vote. So I'm putting these videos out now. I probably won't be on the ballot until 2028, but no matter what, you will, if anybody does any research on me, tries to find out anything about me, this is me. This is my political opinions, my political ideas. This is just the person that you will be sending to Washington, D.C. And that's the whole purpose of this show, is to give you an inkling of what kind of person you will be sending to Washington, D.C. Okay? And so I talk about a different subject every week. And this week I want to talk about something that people our economic system. Okay, our economic system, we have a free market in America, but a lot of times, see, people confuse free market and capitalism. Free market and capitalism are actually different things. And people also confuse socialism with capitalism and free market. And a lot of times people look at the problems with capitalism and they say, hey, capitalism's got problems, let's fix those problems by switching to socialism. And you see, socialism has a lot more problems than capitalism does. That capitalism is the best economic system that can possibly exist. Okay. And I'm gonna go over that with my slides here. But see, what happens is Karl Marx, in his book, The Communist Manifesto, he recognized 4 stages of economic development. He said feudalism, and then capitalism, and then socialism and communism. And they go in that order. And the socialists will tell you, I'm not a communist, I'm a socialist. Well, you know, there's really no difference between that, because socialism is actually just a stop on the way to communism. And you know that what socialists will tell you is no, I'm not a communist, I'm a socialist, blah blah blah. But the reality is really much different than the propaganda that they're trying to sell you. And if you listen to what I'm saying, I think you'll agree, during my little presentation here, if you listen to what I'm saying, I think you'll agree with me that capitalism is the best possible economic system because it involves the government, but only to an extent that the government protects private property. You see, and that's really the difference between free market and capitalism. Free market, I want you to imagine, here's Sabrina Carpenter. She's a pretty little girl. She's an actress. She's a singer and a dancer and entertainer and everything. And she gets up and does this stuff on stage. Really beautiful girl, really talented person. Now, let's say she's walking to town and she's got a basket. She sees a cherry tree. She picks a bunch of cherries off the tree. She puts them in there. And as she's walking to town, she starts singing a song that she wrote. Okay, and here's a comedian, Jerry Seinfeld. He comes up to, "Hi, you're Sabrina Carpenter." "Yes, I am." "Well, I would like some of those cherries." And Sabrina Carpenter said, "I'll give you 3 cherries for a joke." And Jerry Seinfeld tells her a joke. She gives him 3 cherries. Then they both go on their merry way. That is the free market. Okay, the free market is where you own what you have in your hands. This is yours. And what you have in your brain, that belongs to you. Your creative, whatever, everything, if you possess it, if you're in direct possession of it, that's the free market, okay? You can sell, you can trade, you can do whatever you want. This is your stuff, okay? That's the free market. Now, capitalism includes ownership and the rights of ownership. Okay, so let's say, same scenario. Sabrina Carpenter is walking into town. She's got a basket. She gets the cherries. She sees Jerry Seinfeld, trades 3 cherries for a joke, okay? Well, that's when the lawyers get involved. And the lawyers are going to say, Sabrina, that basket you're carrying is based on a design created by this person. You can't have that basket because you did not pay that person basket rights. Okay, well, I'll pay for it. And that cherry tree, that cherry tree, that belongs to somebody. You pick cherries off of somebody's cherry tree. And so you owe them money because you picked cherries off that cherry tree. Oh, and the song that you're singing, you can't sing that song in public because the record company owns that song. Okay? And Jerry Seinfeld, he can't tell you a joke because his company, the company that pays him, owns all of his jokes. You see, that's capitalism. Capitalism is where it's the free market, but it's the free market where somebody is able to have possession of something that somebody else owns. You see. So the good thing about capitalism is like let's say you're driving through South Dakota in the middle of the winter time. You stop in at a gas station and you see a banana and you're like, I want that banana. You eat $2.50 for a banana, ridiculous price, but you want a banana. You eat the banana, you fill up your gas tank, you get going. The reason all of that is possible is because of capitalism. Okay, somebody down in Central America picks the bananas, and as soon as those bananas are picked, they belong to that gas station in South Dakota. All right? The gas that is at the gas station, that was created, a refinery in California, but that oil came from Texas. So Texas, California, up to South Dakota, whatever, right? So the reason that you're able to get gas in South Dakota and a banana is because somebody owns the gas station, somebody owns the gasoline, somebody owns the bananas, somebody owns everything. You own the car, but the bank really owns the car because you're making payments and like that. But see, and that's what I'm talking about. The reason that any of that is possible is because of capitalism. Capitalism provides an opportunity for owners to extend their grasp, okay? You don't actually have to be in possession of a basket of cherries to claim ownership of that basket of cherries. You don't actually have to be in possession of a song or a joke in order to claim possession of those things. And this is something that artists, creative people, it annoys them. John Lennon, one of the Beatles, he used to live in New York, and he was staying at a hotel in New York City for like 2 or 3 years. And one of the things he loved to do is just go out to the park, and he would play his guitar and he would sing Beatles songs. And he would get in trouble for that because the record company owns those songs. So he was contractually obliged not to perform his music in public, in spite of the fact that he created it, and that, you know, he really, I mean, it's his creation, he owns it, right? So that's part of the problem with capitalism, is that the rights of ownership can impede on other people's rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. See, this is John Lennon's pursuit of happiness, singing his music to people. And he loved doing that. That's how he became a Beatle. Okay? But the reason he was rich was because of the record company. See? And so capitalism is not really the problem in that situation. You see, Congress, the people in Washington, D.C., Congress, they are the people who create the laws regarding private property and ownership, property ownership, okay? So Congress creates those laws. So if there is a problem, if an artist, like let's say Sabrina Carpenter, Jerry Seinfeld, John Lennon, they all get together and they say, hey, you know, we should be able to perform the way we can perform in a limited venue for just regular people in the park. We should be able to do this stuff because it's what we love doing, and it's not taking any money out of the record producers' pockets or anything, right? So what they should do, instead of America just saying, screw capitalism, let's go socialism, what they should do is just go to the lawmakers up at Washington, D.C. and say, hey, this is really unfair to us. We need to be able to do this. And the lawmakers up at Washington, D.C. will say, you know, you're right. All the laws regarding, you know, property ownership and private property and everything, they are going a little bit too far. So we're going to amend these laws. We're going to change these laws a little bit so that so that Sabrina Carpenter can walk along the road and sing one of her songs to herself. Yeah, you know, so that Jerry Seinfeld can have a conversation with her, tell her a couple jokes, and, you know, not have to worry about getting sued by the label. So that, you know, Sabrina Carpenter can pick cherries off of a tree and eat them and not have to worry about getting sued, and the same thing, basket and like that. So capitalism is not the problem. Capitalism is the greatest way for everybody to be satisfied. And that's what makes capitalism a very moral system. Capitalism is the most moral economic system that there is, because capitalism endeavors to provide everybody with everything they want. And that includes people who work. There are people out there who want to be doctors. They love to be doctors. They absolutely love being doctors. They love helping people. And they should be able to become doctors. But in a socialist or communist society, you can only become a doctor if you make the politicians that are around happy. Same thing with football players. Some people love to play football. They should be allowed to play football. Musicians, poets, whatever you want to do with your life, you should be able to do it. Communism, socialism, they're going to prevent that from happening. Capitalism needs everybody to be able to do whatever they want to do, because with capitalism, people are allowed to develop naturally and develop their talents naturally. And once their talents are developed, some capitalist, some investor could invest their money so that these people's talents can be brought to as many people as possible. And that's the wonderful thing about capitalism that socialists will not tell you. Okay, so my slideshow today, I've got a little script here. I got some slides, and basically I'll go over what I just talked about here about capitalism, socialism, feudalism, and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's what today's message is all about. So yep. I'm going to start the slideshow now. Hold on. Right there. Yep, that's me. Dang, I'm a good-looking guy. Thomas W. Timbrooks, and I am running for Congress, House of Representatives over Washington, D.C. So, And the core values of the Republican Party: limited government, local decision-making, free economy, fiscal responsibility, personal liberty, and responsibility. That's being a Republican. And I want to remind people, insanity is a mental condition that prevents a person from being able to distinguish between right and wrong, and prevents a person from understanding consequences to actions. It is not doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That is not insanity, okay? So here we are: free market capitalism, socialism, and the role of government. Today I want to explore one of the most important subjects in modern society: how economic systems interact with political systems. This presentation is not intended to attack people or political parties. It is intended to improve understanding. Many modern political arguments become emotionally charged because people are often using the same words to mean completely different things. Words like capitalism, socialism, democracy, fascism, free market are often discussed emotionally rather than structurally. So today, I'm going to step back and examine these systems from a historical perspective, an engineering perspective, and a systems analysis perspective. We'll examine how markets emerged, why governments became necessary, how capitalism evolved, why socialism gained support, and why constitutional systems matter in maintaining stability. The goal is not ideology, the goal is clarity. Now, why definitions matter? See, confused definitions create confused politics. One of the biggest problems in modern political discussion is that people often argue using undefined terms. Two people may use the word capitalism but mean entirely different things. One person may mean voluntary trade, entrepreneurship, innovation, and private ownership. Another may mean monopolies, corruption, outsourcing, or corporate influence over government. The same thing happens with socialism. Some people think socialism means worker protection, safety nets, and public services. Others think it means centralized state control, authoritarianism, or economic restriction. Without agreed definitions, debates become emotional instead of analytical. And when discussions become emotional, people become easier to manipulate through propaganda and simplified narratives. Understanding begins with defining terms clearly. So, economic systems are exchange systems. At their core, economic systems are systems of exchange. They determine how goods are produced, how services are exchanged, how labor is valued, and how property is protected. Every civilization throughout history has had some kind of economic system. Even ancient tribes had systems for exchanging resources, distributing labor, and organizing production. Economic systems are not merely about money, they are about coordination. They help societies answer questions like who produces food, who builds homes, who creates tools, how are resources distributed, how is value determined. These are systems level questions, and like all systems, economic systems contain incentives, feedback loops, strengths, and vulnerabilities. Okay, what is free market trade? Well, it's a voluntary exchange between individuals. Free market trade is one of the oldest human activities. At its simplest level, it is voluntary exchange between individuals. Examples include farmers, craftsmen, local businesses, independent contractors, and family-owned shops. The key principle is mutual benefit. Two people trade because both believe they gain something from the exchange. The farmer gains tools, the blacksmith gains food. No central authority is necessarily required to initiate the exchange. This type of exchange existed long before modern corporations or industrial economies. In many ways, free markets are a naturally emerging human behavior. People specialize in what they do well, then exchange with others. Specialize in what they do well, then exchange with others. That specialization increases productivity and efficiency. The ancient markets. Markets existed long before modern capitalism. Markets are ancient. Long before the word capitalism existed, people were already trading across civilizations. Examples include Roman markets, the Silk Road, medieval merchants, and early American trade networks. The Silk Road connected China, the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. Goods moved across enormous distances: spices, silk, metals, tools, and ideas. Trade helped civilizations grow. Markets encouraged innovation, cultural exchange, and technological spread. This is important because it shows that free trade and capitalism are not identical concepts. Markets existed for thousands of years before industrial capitalism emerged. So the mechanism of free markets, supply and demand. One of the most important mechanisms in economics is supply and demand. Prices communicate information. They communicate scarcity, value, availability, and demand. When demand increases and supply is limited, prices rise. When supply increases or demand falls, prices tend to decline. This creates a centralized information system. No single person has to control the entire economy. Instead, millions of buyers and sellers continuously exchange information through pricing. The equations shown here on the slide represent demand and supply mathematically. This may look simple, but it represents an extraordinarily powerful coordination mechanism. Prices help societies allocate resources without centralized command. So, the advantages of the free markets. Well, strength of voluntary exchange. Free markets have several major strengths. They encourage innovation, flexibility, efficiency, personal freedom, competition, and local adaptation. Because individuals can experiment freely, new ideas emerge rapidly. Competition encourages businesses to improve products, services, and efficiency. Free markets are also highly adaptive. Local businesses can quickly respond to local needs without waiting for centralized approval. Historically, many major innovations emerged from decentralized experimentation. Mechanical innovation, software innovation, aviation, electronics, and countless entrepreneurial ventures. Freedom to experiment often accelerates progress. Now, the disadvantages of the free markets, potential problems here. Free markets also contain vulnerabilities. Without rules or enforcements, markets can become unstable. Potential problems include fraud, unstable pricing, uneven quality, lack of standardization, and power imbalances. A completely unregulated system can create conditions where dishonest actors exploit consumers, monopolistic behavior emerges, or unsafe products enter the market. Markets require trust to function effectively, and trust often requires legal structure. This is where government begins to play an important role. With property rights, markets depend on ownership. One of the foundational requirements of markets is property rights. If people cannot reliably own property, well, the investment declines, trust declines, and long-term planning collapses. I mean, why would somebody build a factory? Oh, a little bit too far there. So why would somebody build a factory, improve land, or invent technology if ownership can simply be seized arbitrarily? Property protection creates stability. Stable ownership encourages investment, maintenance, planning, and innovation. This is one reason legal systems became essential to advanced civilizations. So, contracts and trust. Government enables reliable exchange. Modern economies depend heavily on contracts. Government helps enforce contracts, legal agreements, anti-fraud protections, and dispute resolution. Hold on, I'm going to drink water here. Got that water. That's good stuff. Without enforcement mechanisms, trust deteriorates. Imagine trying to run a large economy where contracts had no legal meaning. Business relationships would become unstable, investment would decline, economic coordination would weaken. Government, when functioning properly, helps create predictable rules that support exchange. So, stable currency. Trade requires confidence in money. Trade also depends on confidence in currency. Stable currency allows pricing, saving, investment, and long-term planning. If currency becomes unstable through inflation or collapse, economic trust deteriorates. History provides many examples where Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela. When money loses reliability, economic coordination becomes extremely difficult. Stable currency is therefore not merely financial, it is psychological. People must trust that money today will still have value tomorrow. So the infrastructure also. I love talking about infrastructure. This is something that we do in government. Markets depend on shared systems. Markets cannot function efficiently without infrastructure. Economic exchange depends on roads, ports, communication, transportation system, and power grids. Infrastructure lowers transactional costs and increases economic connectivity. A farmer must be able to transport crops. Factories require electricity. Businesses require communications networks. Infrastructure is one of the areas where government investment often plays a major role in supporting economic activity. Now, as for security and defense, economic systems require protection. Economic systems also require security. Trade depends on physical safety, national defense, law enforcement, and anti-theft systems. Without security, economic confidence weakens. Historically, piracy, invasion, and instability often disrupted trade routes and damaged economies. Security enables long-term planning and investment. Economic prosperity is difficult to maintain in unstable environments. Our transition to capitalism. Small markets became industrial systems. As industrialization emerged, economic systems began changing dramatically. Trade evolved from small local exchange to industrial scale production. Factories, mechanization, mass production, and investment capital transformed economies. Scale became increasingly important. Industrial systems required enormous coordination and financing. This transition laid the groundwork for modern capitalism. Now, what is capitalism? Capital-based production. Capitalism emphasizes capital-based production. Capital refers to accumulated resources used to produce more goods and services. Capitalism typically includes industrial ownership, investment capital, corporate structure, and large-scale production systems. Unlike simple market exchange, capitalism operates heavily through investment and industrial scaling. Factories, roads, and semiconductor facilities require large pools of capital. Capital aggregation, combining resources at scale. Now, large-scale projects require large investment. Central aggregation allows societies to build railroads, aerospace systems, semiconductor fabs, and global logistic networks. No single individual could easily finance these alone. Pooling resources enables industrial expansion. This dramatically increased production capability during the Industrial Revolution and beyond. So corporations organized economic scale. Corporations became organizational tools for managing large-scale economic activity. They enable specialization, risk-sharing, long-term investment, and industrial growth. Modern technological civilization would be difficult without large organizational structures coordinating manufacturing, logistics, engineering, finance, and distribution. Corporations are therefore not merely economic entities, they are coordination systems. The advantages of capitalism. Industrial strengths. Capitalism accelerated innovation, productivity, technological advancement, economies of scale, and infrastructure expansion. Industrial capitalism contributed to aviation, electricity, mass manufacturing, modern medicine, computing, and communications technology. Investment incentives helped drive rapid industrial growth. The innovation incentives. Reward encourages development. One of capitalism's strongest mechanisms is incentive. Profit encourages invention, efficiency, optimization, and competition. If innovation creates value, innovators are rewarded economically. This creates strong motivation to solve problems. Competition also pressures companies to improve continuously. With manufacturing expansion, capitalism, and industrial production. Industrial systems enable the production of automobiles, aviation, electronics, computing, and semiconductors. Modern civilization depends heavily on industrial manufacturing capacity. Industrial production dramatically increased living standards worldwide. The disadvantages of capitalism. Concentration of economic power. Capitalism also creates risk. Potential problems include monopolies, regulatory capture, outsourcing incentives, labor imbalance, and financial manipulation. Economic power can become concentrated, and concentrated economic power can influence political systems. Monopolistic behavior. Competition can decline when companies become extremely large. Competition may decline. Large entities may dominate markets, suppress smaller competitors, influence regulation, and reduce competitive pressure. Healthy markets often require mechanisms that prevent competition. Regulatory capture. The government can be influenced. Large economic entities may influence legislation, subsidies, regulations, and policy priorities. This phenomenon is sometimes called regulatory capture. When government becomes overly influenced by concentrated economic interests, public trust declines. Outsourcing and dependency. Globalization creates vulnerability. Globalization increased economic efficiency in many areas, but it also created vulnerabilities like a weakened domestic manufacturing, supply chain dependency, strategic vulnerability, and loss of skilled labor. Recent global disruptions revealed how dependent nations can become on foreign production systems. Capitalism is not purely free market. Overlaps exist. Free market and capitalism overlap, but they are not identical. Free market emphasizes voluntary and individual exchange. Capitalism emphasizes industrial capture systems, investment structures, and large-scale production. Understanding this distinction helps clarify many political debates. Governments, okay, sorry about that. There's your overlap of free markets overlap with capitalism. Sorry about that, missed that slide. Government's essential role. Markets require structure. Markets require supporting structure. Government helps support property rights, courts, infrastructure, stable currency, security, and anti-fraud enforcement. This does not necessarily mean unlimited government. It means functioning systems require structure and maintenance. In the constitutional republic, like what we have in America, a self-correcting political system. Representative government creates mechanisms for peaceful correction. A constitutional republic allows elections, law changes, public feedback, and policy adjustment. Rather than requiring revolution for every correction, constitutional systems create mechanisms for adaptation. Feedback systems, political stability through correction. From an engineering perspective, constitutional systems resemble feedback control systems. The equation shown here on the slide there represents systems error. In simple terms, the public defines goals. The government produces outcomes, and elections provide corrective feedback. If outcomes diverge from expectations, adjustments can be made peacefully. Adaptive systems tend to remain more stable than rigid systems. So our adaptive government problems can be addressed without collapse. Representative systems allow reform, amendments, correction, and legal adjustment. This adaptability is one of the strengths of constitutional systems. No complex system remains perfect indefinitely. Successful systems evolve. This is where we have the rise of socialism. A response to industrial problems, socialism gained support during periods of inequality, unsafe working conditions, labor exploitation, and concentrated wealth. Industrialization created enormous productivity, but it also created harsh conditions in many historical periods. Socialist movements often emerged as responses to these conditions. The socialist messaging is presenting solutions to real problems. Socialist movements often emphasize fairness, equality, worker protection, and redistribution. Many supporters viewed socialism as an attempt to correct perceived imbalances within industrial capitalism. Understanding why ideas gain support is important for understanding political history. The power of propaganda. Emotional framing shapes perception. Propaganda simplifies complex systems into emotional narratives. Complex economic problems become framed as oppressors versus victims, moral conflicts, or simplistic good versus evil stories. This increases emotional engagement, but often reduces analytical understanding. Now, the simplified narratives. Complex systems become simplified stories. Simplified narratives may portray profit as exploitation, corporations as enemies, or markets as inherently unjust. But reality is usually more complicated. Most systems contain strengths, weaknesses, trade-offs, and unintended consequences. With centralized economic control, the state expands its role. Socialist systems often increase state control over production, pricing, labor, distribution, and property. Centralization attempts to coordinate the economy through government planning rather than decentralized market signals. The problem of central planning Information complexity. Central planning faces major information challenges. Central authorities must process local demand, pricing signals, consumer preferences, and resource allocation. Large economies contain enormous complexity. Decentralized markets systems distribute decision-making across millions of participants. Central systems struggle to process all information efficiently. The reduced flexibility. Innovation can slow. Highly centralized systems may reduce competition, experimentation, entrepreneurial activity, and local adaptation. Innovation often thrives in environments where experimentation is permitted. Rigid systems can become slower to adapt. On political pressure. Economic control increases political pressure. If the state controls economic activity extensively, political dissent may begin threatening the system itself. Economic control and political control can become interconnected. This can increase pressure toward political enforcement. So centralization and authority. Economic centralization often expands political centralization. Historic examples include the Soviet Union, North Korea, and Cuba. An economic authority centralized, political authority often centralized as well. This is a historical observation about systems behavior. Now, restricting opposition. Political stability becomes a priority. Centralized systems sometimes pressure governments towards censorship, surveillance, restricted dissent, and political enforcement. Maintaining centralized control can become a political priority. Fascism and the centralized control fascism and centralized control. Political enforcement systems. Fascism emphasizes centralized authority, suppression of opposition, political enforcement, and state-directed control. While fascism and socialism differ ideologically, both can involve highly centralized power structures. Concentrated political power always requires careful scrutiny regardless of ideology. Economic and political interdependence. Economics and government are connected. Economic systems influence political structure, social stability, freedom, and distribution of power. Economics and government cannot truly be separated. Economic incentives shape political behavior. Political systems shape economic incentives. With mixed economies. Most modern nations combine systems. Most modern nations are mixed systems. They contain markets, private ownership, regulations, government programs, and corporate structures. Pure systems rarely exist in reality. Modern societies usually combine multiple mechanisms. The United States model. Constitutional republic plus capitalist economy. The United States combines representative government, private enterprise, constitutional protections, and adaptable legislation. Its strength historically came partly from balancing freedom, innovation, law, and correctional mechanisms. Self-correction through representation. Laws can be changed peacefully. Citizens can vote, petition, elect representatives like me and David Russ. We can change laws and influence policy. This allows peaceful adjustment rather than systemic collapse. Representative systems create lawful methods for correction. And the engineering perspective from an engineer, me. Systems require maintenance. From an engineering perspective, no complex system remains stable without maintenance. Economic systems require optimization, modernization, adjustment, correction, and feedback. Even successful systems drift over time. Maintenance prevents instability from accumulating. Reform versus replacement. Correcting problems within the system. Problems within capitalism do not necessarily require abandoning markets or abandoning private property or abandoning constitutional systems. Systems can often be corrected legislatively. The existence of problems does not automatically invalidate an entire system. Education and economic understanding. Citizens must understand the system. Stable democracies require educated citizens. Important areas include economics, financial literacy, constitutional literacy, civic responsibility, and systems thinking. Citizens who understand systems are harder to manipulate emotionally. Misunderstanding creates instability. Poor understanding weakens democracies. When citizens misunderstand systems, propaganda becomes more effective, polarization increases, and emotional narratives dominate. Poor understanding weakens democratic stability. Complex societies require informed populations. So our core conclusion here is that stable systems require balance. Successful societies balance freedom, structure, markets, law, innovation, and accountability. Too much rigidity creates stagnation. Too little structure creates instability. Balance is essential. So my final message here, understanding before replacing. I'd like to close with the central idea of this presentation. The solution of economic instability may not be replacing the system. The solution may be understanding the system well enough to improve it. Complex systems are rarely perfect, but understanding systems deeply allows societies to adapt, reform, improve, and remain stable without collapse. So that's my whole thing here, and I know that took a while. It's a big long script, but like I said, my whole purpose here, my whole function in providing you with the voter with this information, I want you to understand that I understand. Okay, I'm not going to put my face on a billboard, my name, and say vote for me, and hope that you vote for me because you see me over and over and over again on the side of the road. I would like for you to vote for the Republican that is running for the office of the United States House of Representatives for Oregon's 6th Congressional District, because you know what that person is going to bring to Washington, D.C. You know that person is going to bring staff members like myself who understand the system, who understand human psychology, who understand that people are emotional creatures that think logically. Our initial response towards any situation is going to be emotional. And when we look at capitalism, we look at capitalism and we say, well, is it really fair that one person or one family or one group of people owns everything? And yes, it is fair. It's fair. It's as fair as anything in life can get. Okay? And the reason I say that is because if you look at life without capitalism, you have a feudalistic system with tribal interactions. You have a very, very limited reach of anything. Let's say somebody, let's go back 1,000 years before the Industrial Revolution, where everybody was just tribal members of tribes running around throwing rocks and spears at each other. Let's say there was a disease in this part of Europe, France, and the cure was in Mongolia. Getting the cure to the disease, very difficult. So you more than likely are going to die. What's his name? Adam Smith wrote a book, The Wealth of Nations. And in The Wealth of Nations, he talked about how rural people who live in rural communities, farmers like that, if a person has, it would say, he said, if a woman living in a rural community had 20 children, it would be lucky if 2 of those children grew up to have children of their own. So let's think about that. A woman having 20 children, just so that 2 of them can survive. There are women out there today who are in their 40s and they have never had a child. I mean, back a long time ago, a woman would get married and start having children when she was 16, 17 years old. And if she did not have 20 children by the time she was in her 30s, you know, her bloodline was going to end. You know, she wasn't going to have, you know, grandchildren to take care of her when she got old. Capitalism, the Industrial Revolution, changed all of that. So there are problems with capitalism, but the problems that capitalism finds solutions to are very significant problems. 30% infant mortality rate, feudal wars, just 2 tribes going to war against each other for no reason, just killing each other off. Slavery. Slavery is a big thing. Capitalism fixed slavery. And the way that happened, as soon as slavery was taken away, a middle class was created. And with that middle working class, a lot of wealth was created. And this is what built the American economy. So our economic system is our capitalist system. Capitalism discourages slavery. It encourages the abolition of slavery. So that's a big problem that was gotten rid of by capitalism. So these people who say, hey, capitalism's got so many problems and socialism is the cure to whatever problems capitalism brings, these are people who don't understand socialism or capitalism. These are people who just want to have political power. They want to be your owner. Okay, because that's the way socialism works. Socialism, will work like this. Let's say you have a barbecue. You got a nice big barbecue. And you like this barbecue, costs you $3,000, okay? And you make really good food on it. Your neighbors love having a barbecue over at your place. It's good food. So the government would find out you've got this barbecue. And the government would come along and say, how often do you use that barbecue? Twice a week. So, okay, we're going to take that barbecue from you, and if you need a barbecue, you will petition the government for a barbecue, and the government will provide you with a barbecue so that you can do your barbecuing, right? And so you, as a good citizen, you're like, well, okay, well, go ahead and take the barbecue, use it, do whatever you want, as long as I get it back, you know, whenever I need it. Why not? So the government comes along and says, okay, you petitioned for a barbecue? Yeah, I need a barbecue. I need my barbecue back. So you've got this $3,000 barbecue that you gave to the government so that they can use it however they need to. And the government gives you back this little $35 Walmart special. It's a little covered barbecue, right? And you look at the government and you say, that's not the barbecue that I provided to the government. And the government looks at you and says, hey, we all have to make sacrifices if we want to live in this great socialist world, you know, our socialist utopia. And so the neighbors all around you, they see what the government just did. They took everything you had and gave you back practically nothing. So the neighbors all see this happening, so the neighbors hide all their stuff. They hide their stereo, their barbecue, they hide their super slide, they hide anything that they value. Anything, a typewriter, paintings, chairs, whatever. Anything your neighbors value, they hide. And the reason they hide it is because they don't want the government to know about it. And this is where fascism comes in. You see, fascism is a government that controls everything that everybody does. Socialism requires fascism. See, people in America talk about, ooh, fascism, fascism, get rid of the fascism. We do not have fascism in America. Okay, we have the opposite of fascism. We have our government telling people, no, you can't control that. Okay, if you look at the Constitution, the amendments to the Constitution, all worded as the government shall not, the government shall not, the government cannot, the government will not, and all that. The Constitution limits the government. Well, actually, the Constitution defines the rights and responsibilities of the government, separates it into seven articles, Article 1 through 7. The amendments to the Constitution, they define the limitations of the government. That's what how that happens. So we in America have the opposite of fascism. So we have the opposite of socialism, which is capitalism. Capitalism is the most moral economic system that exists because capitalism provides for the unlimited wants and needs of the people in any society and provides jobs for those people who want to consume all of these things. Okay, so that's capitalism. Capitalism is the best system that is out there, and a constitutional republic like what we have, best system out there. So anytime you hear any politician, Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, talking about how wonderful socialism is, what they're talking about is how wonderful it would be for them if they could have absolute control over everything in America and absolutely no transparency. Okay, that's what they want. They want absolute control over everything you have and absolutely no transparency as to how they use it or how they get it. Okay, so that's what you need to know as a voter. As a person who casts your ballot for an elected official, you have to know how bad socialism is, and that socialism requires a fascist government in order to operate properly. Okay, so that's what you need to know. So this is my raccoon of ended discussions here, my ended presentations, my top 10 objectives here. I went research into immunotherapy for curing cancer. That's number 1. And all the way at the bottom, I want to remove $5 trillion from the national debt. I support President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. And this is David Russ here. David Russ for United States Congress 2026. He is the person who has won the primary for the position of House of Representatives, representative for Oregon's 6th Congressional District. And so this is that little deal down there. Russ is for us. That's his website. Go check it out. I am a MAGA Republican, but I'm mostly a Make Oregon 6th Congressional District America's greatest district Republican. So, Mosk Dagta, everybody. But yeah, thank you very much for listening to me, and I really hope that you got some. Value out of what I had to say. So thank you very much, and God bless.